because it's for the glory, the NCAA glory. Welcome back for the stunning conclusion. Video 3, book 3, all for the game. Thank you for watching videos 1 and 2. If you haven't, there's a link in the description. Let's do a recap real quick of what's going on. I've also made some connections on the board that are from last time. So yes, I connected Rico to Drake because Rico sent Drake to Andrew. I slashed Drake because he's dead. I've moved Neil's dad over here because he's connected with the Moriyamas, and I didn't have space over there for all of the eventual associates that'll get connected here. There's a couple other names that are on the board that I'll get to as things go on. Yes, so Neil has just come back from the Raven's Nest. He has a whole new look. His hair is dyed back to its original color. He's feeling bad. The Ravens want him to transfer to them in the summer. He's not going to do that. I'm not sure if it was mentioned in the last book, but they had Neil playing defense because that's what Neil played in when he was younger. Neil was originally a defender or a backliner. So they were having Neil play defense at the Ravens. It's time for the spring semester. It's time for the NCAA tournament. Things are getting heated. This is the best book and also the worst. It's like you get the biggest extremes in this one. Terrible things happen, but great things also happen. So let's get ready for a ride. All right, so remember, Neil comes back before everybody else. Wymack has to pick him up at the airport, and Neil's like in shock. We open on Neil and Wymack alone at the stadium after Neil's return. Neil has turned his phone off, even though like the end of the last book ended with Neil getting like these messages of support back from his team, but he turned it off because he doesn't know how to tell his teammates what he's been going through. Yikes. Neil has like a ton of injuries, that tattoo on his face. He looks super different and he's just not prepared to tell the rest of the team about the change and like why it happened. So Wymack has spoken to Kevin because Kevin was trying to like get a hold of Neil and couldn't because Neil had his phone off. And so Wymack has spoken to Kevin, so Kevin knows Neil's okay. And yeah, Kevin has told the others like kind of what to expect, like what happened, so that Neil doesn't have to. Wymack is worried about like the reintroduction of Andrew because this is going to be off meds Andrew, out of rehab Andrew, and we're worried about it. We're worried. Okay. Neil thinks Andrew's not going to care about his injuries and is going to be mad at him for leaving Kevin's side because he promised he would watch Kevin for Andrew. So Neil's worried about Andrew being mad at him for that. He thinks Andrew's not going to like care at all about the fact that Neil's injured. So Matt comes back first. Matt sees Neil. Matt is pissed. He like gets really defensive, but Neil's like, chill out. You're not gonna be able to do anything to Rico. Like, we gotta settle this on the court. We gotta settle it with sportsmanship. Okay. Matt like punches Kevin because Kevin knew that Neil was going to the Ravens. Like, it's a bit of an unnecessary move because Kevin's got like no will. Like, Kevin couldn't have prevented Neil from going. Nobody could have. I just think like Matt really cares so much about Neil, and like I don't think he gets enough like credit or love for like the fact that he's like Neil's roommate and that he does like a lot to protect Neil. I was team Matt in the last video. I'm still team Matt. I'm a major Matt stan. Okay, Nikki's like also pretty upset about how Neil looks. He's like, don't dare tell me you're fine. Nikki like tries to carefully hug Neil, but it's like everything is painful. Kevin talks to Neil about his hair color because Kevin's mad about that because that's gonna get Neil like probably recognized as the butcher's son. He says that Rico's trying to get Neil found, and Neil replies that it's a compliment that Rico wants him to get him out of the game because he thinks he's a threat. And Kevin's like, take this seriously, kid, you're gonna die. Aaron asks Neil if he did it for Andrew and why, and Neil says he did what he had to do. Because I think, like, honestly, if any, like, yes, it's Andrew, and obviously there's some kind of, like, relationship brewing here, but I think that Neil would have done this if anybody on the team had been threatened, because that's the kind of person that Neil is. He is a martyr in some ways. Nikki buys Neil a Christmas present. He buys him a winter jacket because Neil doesn't have any, like, winter weather clothes, so that's sweet. He also buys Andrew a matching jacket. Okay, Neil drives to go pick up Andrew. Remember, Andrew's been in rehab. So Neil drives, and then obviously the monsters come along. In the waiting room, Kevin tells Neil that like he knows what it's like at the Ravens, so if he wants to talk, he's there. Neil is just like ignores this and then asks Kevin if he's ever going to tell Wymack that he's his son, because yes, that was like a big reveal at the end. A big reveal amid other crazy things that were happening was that Kevin is Wymack's son. So, which honestly, this feels like, how could you not know? If you had sex with someone and then they got pregnant and 9 months later had a baby, I would be like, is that my kid? And also like, if it's not, you were getting down with a lot of people at the same time as me. So like, how does that make you feel? Anyway, I just feel like, and there has to be like, maybe they don't look alike at all, but there has to be like some level of family resemblance. And also, why would Kevin come here if he wasn't Wymack's? Like, there's so many things about Kevin being Wymack's son that just feel like secondary, like an afterthought to me. But anyway, I live for the drama, and this is drama, so. Kevin says he's protecting Coach. Andrew comes out and he's like giving them the silent treatment. As they get in the car, Neil drops the keys in Andrew's palm. Like there is distinctively no touch in this handoff between them. Nikki grabs Neil's wrist as they're getting into the car, and Neil like cringes in pain, and Nikki apologizes, and obviously Neil says it's fine. Nikki says it's not, and then tries to like have a conversation about this, but Andrew turns the radio up so loud that it's impossible to have a conversation. Like, Neil says that literally when they get back, their like ears hurt because Andrew has turned the volume up so loud. So when they get back, Neil has to like reach around Andrew. So Neil gave Kevin his binder, like that binder with all the clippings and the money and blah, 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 before he went to the Ravens. And then Kevin gave it back to him. And so Neil's had it in the car, and Neil has to like reach around Andrew to get it out from under like the driver's seat. And Neil says that being close to Andrew gives him like a rush, like this feeling of like remembering Andrew's protection for him. And it like really freaks him out because he is not used to like relying on people. And he's like worried about how close he's become to Andrew. Okay, so yeah, they all go back into the dorm except for Andrew and Nikki. Andrew holds Nikki back to talk. Everyone keeps telling Neil he's like they're there for him if he wants to talk, and Neil keeps not talking because he's not telling them anything for their own protection because he doesn't want them involved in like the whole Butcher of Baltimore thing. Nikki comes back and tells Matt to avoid Andrew because Matt punched Kevin. And remember, Andrew is on protect Kevin, and so that's no good. So Nikki tells Neil that Andrew wants to see him. So Andrew takes Neil to the roof. Neil brings with him Andrew's knives and like armbands. And so they go up to the roof, and Andrew's like, what is this? Like, what's happening here? Like, why are you so injured? And he like almost touches Neil's face, but doesn't. Neil tells Andrew he spent the winter at Evermore. Andrew takes the bandage off Neil's tattoo, and he says it's a new low for Neil. And Neil said he didn't have any choice, and that he did it because Rico threatened Andrew. Remember, Rico has bought this. That's this guy. Rico has bought off a doctor, Dr. Proust, at the rehab center, and it's implied that this was some kind of like reenactive therapy. I don't want to get into it. So anyway, yeah, Neil knew that Rico had bought off this doctor, and so he went to protect Andrew. And that's what he tells Andrew. Andrew tells him that he doesn't need protection, and Neil says he like at least had to try. And Andrew tells him not to stick his neck out again, and Neil says, if it means losing you, then no. Andrew responds, I hate you, and says Neil was supposed to be a side effect of the drugs, and Neil says he's not a hallucination, and Andrew says, you're a pipe dream, and like sends Neil away. This scene is so heartbreaking because it feels like we were really making like progress in the last book. Like things were happening, and now it seems like we're taking a step back, and it makes me really sad. Anyway, but obviously Neil is committed. Andrew takes his car key off Neil's keys and then throws Neil's keys and his cigarette over the edge. And so Neil has to go down all 4 flights of stairs and pick up the keys off the ground, and finds Andrew's cigarette butt on the ground, and then like puts it in his mouth, and then salutes Andrew, who's still on the roof, which I just find this scene iconic because it's like very OOC behavior. Like it doesn't really feel like a Neil behavior, and I think this is just because we're seeing like Neil, like flirt Neil, and I love flirt Neil because he's so bizarre. He just really doesn't know how to do it because he's never had the chance, and so every action he takes as like a way to grab Andrew's attention is just very strange. Andrew then backs like away from the roof edge, and Neil's like, this is a win for me. And I'm like, in what way? Moving on. So it's just like daily life, just a grind now. So everything is painful for Neil. Neil goes for a run, and it's painful. Neil takes a shower, and it's painful. And Neil gets dressed, and it's painful. Like all Neil can talk about is how much pain he's in. So that's really fun. Neil goes to the library to like check the news. Remember, Neil doesn't have a computer. Like, I don't know exactly when these books are set, but it's like before people generally all had personal computers. Also, I'm not sure, because Neil didn't have a phone, like, so I'm not sure whether Neil would have a personal computer anyway, even if like people did generally have personal computers, but it's in an era where people don't. He falls asleep at the desk because Neil's exhausted, remember, because he's been running on these like weird Ravens days. He gets woken up by Andrew, who had been sent to check on him. Andrew like has his fingers in Neil's hair and like pulls his head back to look at him. And Andrew asks Neil why he's trying to make protecting Neil difficult. And Neil says he didn't tell anyone he was in the library. And Andrew says Neil only has a few hiding spots, and that Coach was concerned when Neil didn't answer his phone. Neil's phone is dead still. In the car, they get in the car because they're going to like practice. In the car, Andrew gives Neil a charger, like for his phone, because Andrew and Neil have the same phone. They have the same phone, they have the same jacket. It's really couples goals, honestly, even if they're not a couple. And then on the charger is a copy of the car key. So the way Andrew does this is that Andrew just opens the glove box, and in the glove box is just this charger and this car key, because Andrew refuses to give Neil anything in a straightforward way. He like, remember Nikki was giving Neil all those clothes from Andrew, So Andrew refuses to actually like acknowledge the handoff of something to Neil. Just iconic behavior. Abby, at the stadium, Abby does like a little check on Neil, and she says she won't give him a clear for at least a week. Neil's not too happy about that. There's a really like bad reunion of the whole team because Andrew punches Matt for punching Kevin. And then there's like this weird moment between Andrew, Renee, and Neil, where just Neil says like, Andrew has his knives out, so I guess it's not out of the blue, but Neil says, I never understood why he liked knives. He's talking about his dad, but the like rest of the crowd interprets that to mean Rico, because Rico's been the one who like cut him up for the past 3 weeks, 2 weeks, Ravens weeks, I don't know. So it's Andrew and Renee like share like a weird cryptic glance at this, and then Andrew says he will lose his taste when he has one in his gut. So that's really like fun for everybody because they're just like cryptically talking about someone and then also like plotting murder. So Wymack gives them their tournament assignment, and I will send it over to my friend Jim to do a little explanation of the NCAA XC tournament, because let me tell you folks, it's not a normal tournament. All right, the NCAA tournament. So this tournament structure doesn't really make a lot of sense, I have to be honest. Even though I obviously read for the drama, the person who wants this to be logical in me finds this part kind of illogical. I don't know why it couldn't have just been like a straight tournament structure. I don't know whether Nora didn't have enough names for teams or like what the reason for having it being structured like that. Maybe it's so that they played the same team a couple times. I don't know, but it's weird. Basically, there's a round robin. So that means the two teams that have the best like record after playing 3 other teams move on. And now I think in most tournaments you would then have like just a regular bracket structure, but not the case here. We have like one elimination match followed by another round robin, but this time there's only 3 teams in the round robin, and it's not based on who has the best record, but rather on who gets the most points. So a team could lose a game but score more points than the other 2 teams and then move on, but still only 1 team gets eliminated in this round. And then 2 teams, like there's another death match here. I'm not really sure how these teams get assigned to each other in the death matches, but there's another elimination game. And then the 3 teams that are left, so those teams move on to a semi-final round that is also a round robin. So the team with the best record again. The 2 teams with the best records then would move on to the final. Palmetto starts off in a round robin with these 3 teams. Now, it's divided into odd ranking teams and even ranking teams. So because Palmetto was able to get an even ranking, they won't have to play Edgar Allen till like the semifinals, till later on. But since Edgar Allen had an odd ranking and all of these schools also had an odd ranking, it means the top 3, USC, University of Southern California, not South Carolina, and Penn will all meet each other before the finals. So like one of them is not making it to this semi-final round. So that's interesting this year. So yeah, Palmetto is in a round robin with Belmont, University of Texas, and Southern University of Arkansas, SUA. It's in Arkansas. It's a school in Arkansas. So after Wymack gives them their tournament assignment, Neil goes with the girls, and then Allison does like his makeup, like covers the bruises with makeup. Dan asks why Rico like took Neil, because nobody else knows about this butcher thing other than Kevin. So there's really, in the team's eyes, there's no reason why Rico should be this invested in Neil. Neil says it was to get to Kevin because Rico can't let Kevin go, which is kind of true because remember, Rico is like keeping this kind of creepy shrine of Kevin's bedroom alive. So that's fun. Allison keeps making like really harsh comments and asking like really tough questions for Neil, and Dan's like has to keep jumping in to do damage control to prevent, to try to like protect Neil from having to answer these like really invasive questions. Neil thanks Allison for doing his makeup. Classes and practices then start. So they have like their spring psych eval, and Neil and Aaron go together. And while Aaron is in there, Neil like checks his phone messages. Neil has like this message on his phone where Kevin told him like right before he went to the Ravens that John would help him if he helped John. And so Neil then like reminisces about John briefly, thinking about how like John, because John's in a similar situation. I think we need to remember that John is also like, is from a crime family and was like sold to the Moriyamas to be on their perfect XC team. So John and Neil have like this connection over that. So Neil briefly like thinks about John and how John was there for him during that 2 weeks, even if he also held him down while Rico cut him up. Which is a really fine line between friendship and enemies in this one. Then Neil goes in to talk to B. Betsy asks Neil if he wants any tea. Neil says, I'm fine. But he's not. He doesn't tell her anything again. And then because Aaron and Neil went together, we get like this rare Aaron-Neil conversation moment where Aaron and Neil just like both don't like Betsy. That's what they talk about. So at least they have one thing in common. Neil stops Renee to ask about like the thing with the knives. Like why they were so weird when Neil said that thing about the knife. And Renee tells Neil that she'd killed a man who had been abusing her. She like learned how to knife fight and like killed this man in a knife fight. And then she told Andrew about it, and Andrew like took her knives away from her. So the knives that Andrew carries were actually used to be Renee's. Neil asks her how she thinks Andrew's doing without like the drugs, and she tells Neil to go see for himself. Neil goes to the court. Remember, Neil's not practicing because he's not been cleared because he is injured. Andrew is doing like a really terrible job in goal. Well, I mean, he's doing a great job defending the goal. He's like doing a really mean job of throwing the balls back at the striker's feet, so they keep like getting tripped by the balls. He's just playing kind of nasty with them. So Wymack tells Neil to get out there on the court and talk to Andrew and tell him to like chill the fuck out. So Neil's like, why would that work? So Neil goes onto the court. He tries to bargain with Andrew, telling him that winning is the key to breaking Rico, and so he should start playing like a team. But obviously that's not what Andrew cares about. So Andrew's not budging on it. Neil asks what it'll take. Andrew asks to see Neil's scars, and so Neil agrees to that. And then Andrew tells Neil to tell Coach that the sending Neil tactic won't work a second time, that he's like on to Coach. And Neil's like, okay, I'll tell him that, but I don't understand why, because Neil doesn't realize that Wymack knows that Andrew likes Neil, and Neil doesn't know that Andrew likes Neil. Because Neil is kind of like emotionally blind. I don't think Neil actually even realizes he's flirting. Maybe that's why it's so bizarre. Coach asks, when Neil relays that message, Coach asks him if they're going to be a problem, like if Andrew and Neil are going to be a problem. And Neil's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And Wymack says, I don't know if you're being obtuse to fuck with me, if you're really that dumb. And it's like, I think Neil just really is that dumb. He's not dumb. I won't say he's dumb. He's just like really emotionally stunted in this department because like we know his history with his mom and stuff. Neil's like not good at reading these signals. Like remember how he was with Marissa? Like I don't think Neil gets it when it comes to like relationships. Okay, so there's another Colombia trip. Andrew buys Neil a whole new set of clothes, but this time he like has Neil change in front of him because remember, Neil told Andrew he would let him see his scars. So Neil takes off his shirt and lets Andrew see his scars. Andrew looks at them and says they're not from a life on the run. And Neil explains like a couple of them, and like how they come from, like some of them come from his life before he was on the run and like abuse from his parents. They go to Eden's Twilight, usual nonsense, blah, blah, blah. Neil goes to the bar alone at one point, and Roland, who I haven't put up on the board, even though he's kind of a little bit of a significant character in this one, he's been in all 3 books, but he's basically the bartender at Eden's Twilight. I just haven't put him on here because I don't know. Roland like takes one look at Neil's wrists and is like, makes kind of an insinuation about Andrew and Neil being together, and says like, you know, they make padded handcuffs. It's like Neil does not get what he's talking about. And then Neil returns to the table and asks Andrew in German. So just Andrew and Kevin are there. So he asks Andrew in German why Roland thinks Andrew is tying him down. And then Andrew doesn't really give a clear answer. So then Neil asks about like the thing with Coach. Neil says, Andrew says that Coach isn't gonna get involved in like their personal problems. And Neil says, you hate me, I'm not a personal problem. And Andrew says, that doesn't mean I wouldn't blow you. Icon. And so now Neil is like realizing things. Like Neil has been obtuse, oblivious, whatever. And now he's realizing things. He's like, oh, you like me. Like you like me, don't you? And Neil's like, why didn't you say something? Could have been getting it on. They wouldn't have been, but whatever. Andrew says, why should I have? Nothing will come in it. Neil is so lost in the sauce thinking about this. Andrew said he doesn't want anything, so how could Neil be an exception? Basically, Andrew's like, I can't do a relationship, so like, even if I like you, like it doesn't matter. Like we can't be together because of like the whole situation. And Neil is just like, he likes me. And I'm like, chill out, buddy. So Neil, it's been like a week. Neil's back at practice. We're back to daily life. The upperclassmen, remember this bunch? The upperclassmen lament like the losses it seems they've made with like getting themselves ingratiated with this group, because like Andrew was never really like on the side of like getting in with this group because he was off at rehab, but now that he's back and off his meds, he's really not into this group. So that's kind of a problem. Yeah, Andrew was never really involved in like the getting together with this group. So it only kind of worked because he was at rehab, and these 3 were like, these 2 and dragging along Aaron were kind of sort of able to be like friends, but now that Andrew's back and off his meds, it's just not working out. Neil suggests that they work on getting Aaron on their side first because Nikki and Kevin are like willing to be friends. Because Kevin knows that if they're all friends, it'll be a stronger team, like the team dynamic will be stronger, and Nikki just wants friends because Nikki is a social butterfly. Dan says she'll work from like the Caitlin angle, and Matt says he'll try to work on Aaron. So then, okay, night practice with Kevin. That's Kevin, Neil, and Andrew. Neil and Andrew talk about why Andrew plays Exy. This is in like the locker room getting ready. He played in juvie. Exy was assigned to him, and being a striker was assigned to him. And Neil makes some compliment about Andrew's ability in goal because like Andrew's playing style is really suited to being in goal. Then he wonders like how Wymack knew that Andrew was gay, and it's like because he has eyes. Wymack is just so intuitive emotionally. I don't know why he says he's not into the emotional stuff with them, because Wymack knew. Neil also says that striker wasn't his first choice either, and that he played defense in Little Leagues. So Andrew's like, you said you learned in Millport, and Neil's like, oh, that was half true. I learned how to play striker in Millport. So Neil is just like slowly expanding what Andrew knows about his backstory. Yeah, Neil says he wanted to play XC so bad at Millport that he settled for striker. Andrew calls him a raccoon where XC is the only shiny thing in his life. And then he critiques Neil for saying he doesn't understand S-wording yourself because playing XC is like actively trying to die for Neil. Neil says it's the opposite. XC is the only thing he has to live for. Andrew says he doesn't understand. Neil asks Andrew what he's afraid of, and Andrew says heights, which Neil doesn't believe, before sending Neil off to practice with Kevin. After the practice, Kevin tells Neil to sort out his problems with Andrew for the sake of the team. Either get together or don't, kids. The Aaron Andrew problem. Matt tells Neil that Aaron and Andrew made a promise. If Andrew stuck around with Aaron, Aaron would stick with him. So basically, if they stick to each other, if they protect each other, or if Andrew protects Aaron, really, then that'll work for them. But it means that no girlfriends, no friends, etc. That's why they're not really friends with anyone, and why Aaron also can't date Caitlin. Can't really date Caitlin. I've connected them because they're basically dating, but they can't really officially be dating. And Aaron's not really willing to fight for Caitlin. Which girl? This boy's not willing to fight with you. It's been like, what, a year, 2 years? And he's not willing to... I'd give up. She must really like him. So Neil sees Aaron and Andrew as a kind of stalemate where they're unwilling to reach out to one another, unwilling to like talk to one another, but also unwilling to let one another go. So Neil develops a plan. Neil honestly could be a diplomat with the way he negotiates with people. He's always trying to figure out like how he can bargain them into doing things for him. And then always saying that like I asked line. But basically Neil could be a diplomat if he wasn't so off the handle in the presses. He knows several languages. Like I'm charting Neil's future career plans if none of this were the case. None of this mafia, Yakuza junk were the case. Neil could be a diplomat. If he just gets that press thing under control. Neil plans to get both of them into therapy with Betsy, like to do a group session between them with Betsy to get them to like work on their problems, and have Caitlin push Aaron into this idea because he knows Andrew trusts B, but Aaron does not, and so he's going to get Caitlin to push Aaron to go to B. Okay. Then Neil's getting his makeup done with the girls again, and he reveals the tattoo. Like he's been wearing a bandage over this tattoo, so nobody's seen it. The girls say to get it removed. Allison says she'll spot the money to get it removed. Neil admits to lying to them about various things, and Dan gets kind of mad. Dan's like, "Don't do that to them as a team, because it like him lying about things messes up their ability to be a good team." And Neil says he's never had friends before, and he's trying to trust them, but that he needs time. Just sad. Okay, so Neil gets Betsy's and Caitlin's numbers from Dan. He makes a plan to meet Caitlin. He calls B and asks her, like, if I get these two in a room together, can you figure it out? And she's like, I can try. And he's like, I don't need try, I need do. And she says, okay, I can do it. Then Neil tells Caitlin his plan, asks her to convince Aaron, and he says he'll convince Andrew. Game day! So this is the first game in the tournament in the round robin against the University of Texas. So they have to fly to Texas. And before they go, they're getting ready to go, and Matt suggests like a bet to Neil about Allison, and Neil like won't bet. And then Matt talks about how they have 16 bets going, 14 of which Neil could potentially take part in. Neil's like, why 14? And Matt says, well, a couple of them are about you. And so he can't bet on himself. And then Matt tells him that the team bet against him and Dan. And Neil then thinks about Andrew and how it'll never work out for them. He asks Matt about the bet for Renee and Andrew. Matt says he was on the side of yes because Andrew let Renee drive his car. Who else does Andrew let drive his car? And then he says he's less sure now, but he thinks he'll probably make the money back up in another bet. Neil is so oblivious. Okay, at the airport, Neil sees Andrew at the gate alone. They're both wearing the same jacket during this interaction. So just imagine that, it's really cute. And then asks him if he really is afraid of heights. Andrew doesn't respond and instead asks Neil what his father's name was. It's kind of weird. In every conversation in these books, it kind of feels like everyone has their own agenda and then like won't answer other people's questions. Neil says that his dad's name was Nathan, and Andrew tells Neil that he doesn't look like a Nathan, and Neil says he's not, he's Nathaniel. And then Andrew just walks away. Okay, once they get on the plane, Neil, Andrew, and Kevin are sitting together. Kevin is in the middle, Andrew is in the aisle, and Neil is at the window, I'm pretty sure. Andrew is like clearly very actually afraid of heights and flying. And Neil cannot keep his eyes off him. He's so worried about Andrew, but Andrew doesn't look at him. So then they get to like they have to do a layover. They go to like a gift shop in the mall. They go to a gift shop in the airport, and Andrew, nobody else is watching Andrew, but Neil's obviously watching Andrew. And Andrew buys Bee a glass animal, because Bee has like this series of glass animals in her office that Neil remembers. And then Neil watches Andrew all through the next plane ride. And then it's finally game time. Rico and John show up for this game, and then that kind of freaks everybody out. Neil's like, we must be so good that they're intimidated and have to come see us play, blah, 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 blah. Whatever you want to tell yourself. They start talking strats. Neil says that one of the backliners has a foot on him, and Andrew says no, he's only got 8 inches. And Neil is surprised about that. Then Andrew would know the height. Neil realizes like that Andrew's got an eidetic memory and that he's paid attention to like all of the stats about this team. Neil says to the team that they're going to win and that they should rattle Rico and John. Game's fine initially. Dan has a fight with the UT dealer. Both get yellow cards. Game heats up. Half ends at 4-2 Fox's favor. In the second half, the Longhorns get like really crazy and are getting carded all over the place, but the Foxes are kind of keeping it chill because they can't afford to have anybody carded because they don't have any spare players. The Foxes win 7-6, so it's kind of close. After the game, Renee goes over to Rico and John and shakes John's hand, and then Neil watches this and asks Kevin to give Renee John's number to see what she can do on like the Jean front, because Kevin may have given up on Jean, but Neil wants to get his bestie out of there. Then there's like the post-game press, and Neil goes into press mode and like self-sabotages himself, obviously. He shows the reporters the tattoo, and then he says he thinks Rico's made a mistake, that Rico doesn't deserve him or Kevin on the perfect court. And then he says he will definitely not be transferring to Edgar Allan in the summer. Then in the locker room, Neil argues with Kevin in French and tells Kevin to stand up for himself and stop backing down to Rico. Neil is done with the pity for Kevin, apparently. All right, back to daily life. Now, when I was getting ready to do these videos and rereading them, I thought this event occurred way earlier in the books. I don't know why I didn't realize it didn't happen until now. But because of what Neil said in the press, Ravens fans completely trash the cars. So Allison's Porsche, Matt's truck, Andrew's car. I'm not really sure what car Andrew has. And not just their cars, but literally all Palmetto athletes' cars get like dead animals, like, it's all gross, it's terrible. But their cars get the worst of it, like tires slashed, like the whole body of the car is messed up in Andrew's car's case. Like Allison and Aunt Matt's cars can get like replaced, but Andrew's car is literally destroyed. And that was like Andrew's baby. Like he spent the insurance money from Tilda's death on this car. Like all of it. It was a big deal car for him. And then the team has like this inter-team fight because Aaron yells at Neil, implying something about Seth's death that makes Allison mad. Allison slaps Aaron, which causes Andrew to go after Allison, and Renee protects Allison. And Neil, with a tiny bit of help from Aaron, has to talk Andrew down in German from hurting Allison. The police come, take statements, Wymack rents them all cars, and then like orders them all lunch, because that's what this team does. They just have food together all the time. And that is a true sports thing, I think. Neil asks Aaron what Andrew's protecting him from and tells him to like figure it out with Andrew, because Neil's mad. Neil's been trying so hard to work on this issue, and they're just like screwing around. So Neil's frustrated with everything, and he goes on a run. Neil and Allison then talk about Seth. Allison says she knew Andrew's theory all along because Andrew told her. Which, when did Andrew have a conversation with Allison? Andrew just runs around in the background of all this, doing things and telling people to do stuff and talking to people, and it just seems kind of OOC. But it's the truth. He's like kind of a background marionetting like a little bit of this stuff. Nikki lets Neil know that Andrew is back because Andrew's also like taken off with Wymack to go rent the cars. Neil asks where, Nikki says he doesn't know, so Neil heads to the roof because that's where they went the last time. He and Andrew just talk. It's shameless flirting on Neil's part. Neil then goes downstairs, sees Aaron, they immediately get into a fist fight. And like other athletes come out and like are like, you guys need to chill. This team is the worst thing that's come to this campus. They yell at each other in German until like the other foxes show up. Aaron is fighting Neil because Caitlin told Aaron that she won't talk to him until Aaron goes to therapy with Andrew. And Aaron knows that Neil is the one who got Caitlin to do this. So Aaron is not happy about that. And Nikki is there to overhear this conversation, and Nikki understands German. And Nikki's like, damn, Neil, nice job. And Aaron is then mad at Nikki for not taking his side. Everything about it is like incredibly dysfunctional. Like the way everything is connected here is so problematic. But like it's when you can suspend disbelief when you're reading it, it's really good. But then when you're trying to like do a video like this and you have to like keep like making notes and thinking about like the way things are all connected together, it's hard to keep it together. There's so much going on here. And like I'm sure that people out there like are dealing with these kinds of issues, but like that have like such a melting pot of issues, and obviously that's like Wymack's intention, is to like have a team with all these, is to like pick up these lost causes. But to have a team with all of these issues all at the same time, and the way they're like connected together, like with Drake being sent by Rico, and like Neil and Kevin knowing each other from their youth, and Kevin being Wymack's son, and like all of this that's going on, it's too much sometimes. They have a terrible practice, everyone's fighting, it's in pieces. Wymack calls Neil over and is like, you fix this, buddy. Because Neil is the fourth staff member. Neil is the assistant coach here. Like, ugh. But Neil is then expected to like fix this whole mess. And so Neil's like, fine, I'll start with the goalies. And it's like, these two aren't even having a problem with each other. What do you mean you're starting with the goalies? You just want to go to somebody that's not fighting. So Neil just starts like walking with them. Like when there's breaks in practice, or like when they go for runs, Neil like just gravitates with this group. So we have like a little trio here now. And they just talk. It's like, they just have like normal conversations. Like they do the kind of normal things that people talk about, like where they talk about like what's going to start World War III and who would you save in a zombie apocalypse, blah, 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 blah. Neil gets Andrew alone and talks to him about the group therapy thing. And they have like a really amazing conversation that I recommend you just go to that book and exclusively read that conversation because it's amazing. And like all Neil Andrew conversations, I would just go ahead and go solo the books, just the Neil Andrew conversations. Time of your life. I said that in the last video, but it's still true. Neil wants Andrew to take some of Neil's money for his car because Neil feels guilty about his car being destroyed. Andrew refuses. There's like various Andrew touching Neil things. And Andrew's like they're both smoking. And then Neil also asks Andrew to stop taking cracker dust and also to let Aaron go and to let Aaron see Caitlin. So basically, Neil is asking for everything, hoping he can at least get Andrew to give him something. Like, Neil is basically like, let me just ask for everything that I want to get, and then maybe he'll relent on at least one of these things, and then I can work on the other things later. So then they have their game against Belmont, their second game in this round robin, on January 19th, which is Neil's real birthday, which honestly, it seemed kind of early for a spring semester to have already been back this long, with like classes having started. Like ostensibly it's been 2 weeks since classes started, and it's January 19th, which means they came back like January 4th. Which is, I mean, not unheard of, certainly, but like, when I was in college, we wouldn't have come back until, that's not even a week between, anyway, the timeline doesn't make sense. There's no way this game could have happened this early. Anyway, January 19th, Neil's real birthday. Aaron is still being awful about the Caitlin thing. Neil is thinking about the Aaron, Andrew, blah, blah, blah thing when he opens his locker and blood explodes everywhere, all over his gear, all over his stuff. Matt comes in, sees Nikki comes in, Nikki gets Coach, Andrew comes to Neil's side. Coach asks if it's Neil's blood, Andrew says it's not. Neil's worried about his gear. Neil's like freaking out about the gear. Matt says he has a towel and goes to get it, but stops when he sees Happy 19th Birthday Junior in blood on the wall. Yikes. That really flips Neil out. He asks why Matt to just let him leave it for now and not to get the police, because he doesn't want the police to come, because if the police come and get his fingerprints, they'll know who he is, and that'll be not good. Neil is able to get like what he needs from like old gear that they have lying around, and Abby does her best like trying to clean his uniform, but he'll need all new stuff. Trying to get blood out of stuff. They win 8-5. Post game, Wymack's like, okay, I'm done. I need to know about this Neil Rico thing. Like, I need to know what's happening here. And Aaron accuses Neil of being a runaway, which is, yes, true. Neil and Aaron have an out in the open fight about getting each other's business, and Neil tells Aaron he's trying to help him, not hurt him. Andrew and Aaron finally start to talk a little bit about their mother's death. Aaron, remember Andrew killed her because she was abusing Aaron. Maybe a little bit of progress is happening. Allison wants to know what Rico has on Neil. Neil says Rico knows who he is, and Kevin says Neil's family has a reputation which Rico is trying to use against him. Dan asks if it'll be a problem, and Neil says no, but it already is a problem. Like, there's no way to say that it's not a problem, because it already is a problem. And they go back to the dorms, and Neil gets the first of many texts. It's just a text from an unknown number. It just says the number 49, which he ignores. He deletes it and ignores it. Dan thanks Neil for telling some part of the truth and for working on Aaron and Andrew. But Matt and Dan are kind of shocked that Andrew's a murderer, but Renee and Neil are like, you think you can fix them? The murder's a part of him. I'm here for the murder. And maybe that's because Matt and Dan are like normal people, and Neil and Renee are like, we've seen some shit. So back to daily life. Okay, so Neil runs to the stadium to go to the locker room to clean the blood up. When he gets there, it's already clean, so he calls Wymack to figure out like who cleaned it, because he's worried that like maybe Wymack did call the police. Wymack tells him that he and Abby cleaned it, and then he asks Neil to like just stay there and to look through files with him instead. And Neil's like, okay, sure. And Wymack says he'll bring breakfast. So Neil just like chills in the stadium waiting for Wymack, and he's looking at Dan's photo wall. Dan has like a little photo wall, and he sees that there's a photo of him and Andrew together at the airport. Neil almost takes it down, but then he decides to leave it so that some part of him will always stay with the court. That's like sweet, but it's also sad because he thinks he's going to die. Like you can't have, everything is bittersweet. Wymack wants Neil to help him go through possible recruits for the striker line, because Neil is an assistant coach. Neil wonders why Wymack asked him and not Kevin. Wymack says Kevin will go through Neil's picks afterwards. And then Wymack tells Neil that he's making Neil vice captain next year. And Neil's like, I can't do that, because he thinks he's going to die, like he can't commit to the team. And Wymack tells Neil that he's something special for being able to kind of like unite the team a little bit. And Neil can't really tell Wymack why he can't be the vice captain next year, so he just leaves. And then Neil sits on the curb outside the stadium freaking out, and so he calls Andrew. Like Neil, in this day alone, Neil has made 2 outgoing phone calls. So things are changing for this boy. And then he calls Andrew and then Andrew comes and like picks him up. It takes them a while because Kevin and Andrew were actually on their way to go buy Andrew a new car. And so they were already like sort of on their way out of Palmetto, and they had to come back for Neil. So Neil stays in the car when they get to the dealership, and then Neil drives the rental back to the rental place. When they get back, Andrew beckons Neil to the roof. Andrew tries to give Neil the second key to the car. Neil doesn't take it right away, so Andrew just drops it on the ground. Andrew says it's just a key, and Neil says, you know it's not just a key. He says, you know it's not. For Neil, it's always been like on a run, so giving Neil like all these keys is like giving him a home. He tells Andrew, you gave me a key and called it home, and I haven't had a home since my parents died. Andrew tells him he's not Neil's answer, and Neil isn't his. Neil tells Andrew he just wants to stop being nothing. Andrew tells him he hates him. Neil says he doesn't believe him, and then Andrew kisses Neil, and we're all like, finally! We have been waiting, and it took till here, 50% of the way through the 3rd book in the series, to finally have something happen. So Neil brings his hands up to Andrew's face, but doesn't touch Andrew because he remembers that Andrew doesn't like being touched, so he grabs like the collar of his coat instead. Andrew pulls away and tells Neil to let go and that he can't do this right now. Andrew tells Neil that he stopped because Neil isn't going to tell him to stop, and that he's not going to do anything with Neil because Neil is having like a nervous breakdown right now, because Neil called that. Neil's been like freaked out about this vice captain thing all day, so he's not going to take advantage of the fact that Neil is in like a bad mental state right now. And then Andrew says he hates Neil 92% going on 93% of the time. And then Neil picks up the key and leaves, thanking Andrew. It's like, for what? The kiss or the key? I don't know. But yeah, Andrew is very aware, obviously, of consent. And that's something that's like a big deal in their relationship, is that they're like very respectful of one another. And I think that's nice. Obviously, that's great. Consent is key, but it's the bare minimum. And so even though like how much they care for each other is really like good and important in these books, I just think that like because so much is bad has happened to them, the fact that they are giving each other consent for what they do is like seems way more romantic than it really should be. It should just be always like that. So I don't know what to say more about that, but anyway. Back in his room, Neil considers his feelings for Andrew. He knows that if he told Andrew no, Andrew would respect that. And Neil thinks about how many stupid choices he's made this year, like coming to college and joining an exit team and et cetera, and talking to the press and saying all those things. And he thinks about how easy it would be to just say no to Andrew, but that would just be running away again. And even though he's made so many stupid choices this year, it really has been like the best year of his life so far, which is pretty sad considering all the things that have happened. Neil then falls asleep in the middle of the day and wakes up to a 48 text. Remember, he's getting this countdown. He briefly talks to Dan and Matt and then goes back to sleep. And then Neil gets a 47 text the next day. So now he's starting to be a little concerned. He counts the days down on the calendar, but lands on March 9th. But nothing's happening that day, so he doesn't know how to interpret it. And he just deletes the text and doesn't tell anyone. And if I was Neil, I'd tell somebody. I mean, actually, no. If I was me, I'd tell somebody. Neil wouldn't tell anybody. So Neil just goes back to like doing his Spanish homework or whatever. Andrew's new car is a Maserati. Cincinnati, Maserati of Ohio. The fact that that prank got pulled on Neil, I don't know if you can call it a prank, that Neil got covered in blood is doing like wonders for pulling the team together, even if Andrew aren't talking. So Neil is trying to focus, but he's so into Andrew that he can't stop looking at him all the time. Boy, you have a game to win. You need to chill out, sit down. Neil tries looking at Nikki and Matt, I guess lecherously, but nothing's changed there. I think that's because Neil, the only one for you is Andrew. We could talk about like whether or not Neil is good, like ace spectrum representation, but I don't think I'm qualified to talk about that. And it sort of falls into I don't think necessarily it's good to categorize Neil in that way. Of course, like if you want to, if that's who you are and you want to categorize Neil in that way, of course, like I'm not gonna say you can't, obviously. Everyone can have their own like headcanon about Neil's sexuality, but I think like it gets a little dicey when you're like connecting it with like all this trauma. Like obviously Neil's traumatic past does have some influence on his sexuality, and we wouldn't want to necessarily say that like that's entirely connected to, or like that an ace identity or a demi identity would be connected to trauma. Like it would be bad to like make a blanket statement like that, because I think that can happen sometimes. Stuff's happening. Kengo Moriyama, who's like the leader of the Moriyamas, brother to Tetsuji, father of Riko and Ichiru, is ill. Like he's in the hospital. He gets back out of the hospital, but it's like kind of a shake-up on the Moriyama front, so that will remain interesting. They win their final game in their round robin, so obviously they're moving on. Neil's still getting texts. Aaron and Andrew do start going to therapy together, and Nikki's like, how'd you get Caitlin to do that? And Neil says, I asked. But as a result, Aaron is totally like avoiding their dorm room, and spending more time with Caitlin. So basically it's gonna get worse before it gets better. Kevin and Neil watch other teams' games to prepare for their first deathmatch game. Nikki's like, guys, this is no way to spend a Friday night, and makes Neil take him to go get ice cream. And Kevin's like initially like, Neil, you can't go. And Neil's like, I'm tired of you, and goes and gets ice cream. Nikki needs Neil to go with him though, because Nikki is no longer on the insurance policy for the new car, which implies that Neil is on the insurance policy for the new car. So that is interesting. This surprises Neil. Basically, Neil realizes that like Exie can't be there for him like the Foxes can, and also that he's never going to be Kevin, and that he doesn't care what Kevin thinks. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to go get ice cream with Nikki. Chill out, Kevin. Growth. So when they get back, Nikki goes to Matt's room to like borrow a DVD, and during this time that Nikki is out of the room and Kevin is also not in their like common room, Neil and Andrew are alone in the room. Neil asks Andrew if he doesn't like being touched because he doesn't like it, or because he doesn't trust anyone to touch him. So Andrew says it doesn't matter, and Neil says he wouldn't ask if it didn't matter. Andrew says it doesn't matter because Neil doesn't swing. Neil says he hasn't liked anyone before because he didn't have a choice. Neil thinks about how he's not concerned that Andrew is a guy, rather Andrew feels so safe to him that it makes sense to him as an act of self-preservation to be with Andrew. Neil tells Andrew that he trusts him. Andrew tells Neil that he shouldn't trust him. And then Neil asks Andrew to like tell him his boundaries. Andrew says he's waiting for a clear yes or no. Neil says yes. Neil tells Andrew it's fine if you hate me. Andrew says good because I do. And then yeah, they start kissing, and then Nikki comes back. Nikki like crashes into the door because it's locked. Yeah, it's like it's such a cute scene. Back at practice, Kevin's critiquing Neil's playing style. Neil goes to talk to, remember Neil is having like his little walk breaks with the goalies, so Neil goes to talk to Renee and Andrew about it. And Andrew tells Neil to stop copying Kevin and calls Neil a junkie. And Renee like rephrases that and says like Neil is passionate whereas Kevin is analytical, so they're not gonna win by playing with the same styles. Like Neil needs to develop his own style and stop listening to Kevin so much. Neil is growing beyond Kevin, which is really what I'm here for. They have a game against Vermont. They're playing well. At the half, it's 6-3, and the announcers are all like surprised that the Foxes could be doing so well. And it's like, they did have a 12-2 record. Like, I don't know why we're surprised now. Like, they must have done pretty well in the fall, whatever. It's a tough second half. Nikki gets a red card, which means he's out for this game and maybe out for the next game. On the penalty shot, Andrew sends it to Neil. He blocks it and then sends it to Neil, who races after it, rebounds off the wall to himself, and then scores before crashing into the far wall. Neil goes to Andrew and asks him if he told Nikki to do the foul, and Andrew says yes because it was getting boring. Kevin scores once more, so they win 8-3. Wymack says they're all going to Abby's to celebrate. Neil finds Andrew outside and tries to talk to him. Andrew complains that Neil only wants to talk about Exie, and Neil asks Andrew if he'll talk to him if he talks about something different, and Andrew asks if he even can talk about something different, and then Neil is silent because Neil doesn't have anything else to talk about. He's annoyed because he's like, the only thing I have to talk about is Exie, so Andrew leaves and goes inside, and then Neil gets a 28 text, and this time Neil is like annoyed because of the Andrew thing, and he texts back enough, and it's like funny because yeah, that'll show him texting back enough. It's so funny. Tournament continues. It's the round robin points match. Reporters come. Neil's trying to be good with the press, but he's got to say something, and he does. He says, I can't afford to be quiet. Silence means I condone their behavior, and that's a dangerous illusion. I'm not going to forgive or tolerate them just because they're talented and popular about the Ravens. And then he says when the Ravens lose to them in the final, they should call for Coach Moriyama's resignation. Neil doesn't learn any lessons about speaking to the press, but he also says the most badass things. So I can't knock him. Kevin is obviously gagged by this in a bad way. Kevin cancels their night practice to go get really, really drunk, and Andrew comes over to Neil's room while Matt and Dan are away. And Neil like briefly considers continuing to do his homework before he realizes that he and Andrew are alone. Andrew closes the distance between them, asks for consent. Neil gives it. Andrew waits until Neil puts Neil's hands into Neil's pockets before kissing him. And then because Andrew needs clear confirmation that Neil is not going to touch him. Neil's phone buzzes with that countdown text. So Andrew grabs his phone and throws it, or Neil throws it away, and that briefly distracts Andrew. So Neil kisses his neck, and Andrew is like, "What are you doing?" Andrew then tells Neil that he can put his hands in his hair and leave them there, that would be okay. They go a little further. Andrew gets Neil off but won't let Neil reciprocate because he doesn't want to be touched by him. Neil's protests a little at this, and then Neil's inner commentary is that he won't live long enough to understand all the broken layers of Andrew's sexuality, but he's not offended by Andrew just cutting this interaction off there. Then this is followed by a lot of boring scenes that are trying to make you feel the anticipation of the countdown and what it's counting down to. Ken goes in the hospital again. Neil's trying to watch the news about it. Andrew turns it off. Neil and Andrew just sit and stare at each other, a favorite activity. Andrew asks Neil what his problem is, and Neil asks Andrew to break their promise to stop protecting him. Stop protecting Neil, because now Neil doesn't want Andrew in the line of his father, although he says it's because he thinks hiding behind Andrew is still running. Andrew doesn't want to relent, but Neil argues that Kevin doesn't need him anymore. And Andrew doesn't really give Neil an answer on whether or not he's gonna let him out of their promise. Getting ready for the Nevada game. This is the first in that kind of round robin points matches. So Neil has a new part of his routine that's rooftop time with Andrew. They mostly just talk, flirt, and make out. It's kind of cute, and it's really sweet, and it's just filled with this undercurrent of what is this countdown for? And I am worried. Neil is just asks Andrew a bunch of questions during these scenes, is Nikki gonna give you the house when he moves back to Germany? Do you even want to stay in South Carolina? What do you want to do with your future? Blah, 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 trying to get to know him. Andrew says that planning that far ahead is a waste of time. Neil kind of reveals a little bit about himself to try to get Andrew to open up, which is sort of effective. Neil says he's lived in 22 cities. Andrew says he's lived in 12 houses, but they've all been in California. Neil says they should go somewhere for spring break. Andrew asks where and why, and Neil says why not, and that they could go anywhere. Andrew says Neil only invests his time in worthless pursuits. Neil says they're not worthless, as in he and Andrew are not worthless. Andrew says there is no this is nothing. Neil says, and I am nothing. Andrew nods, and Neil says, and as you've always said, you want nothing. So some fun wordplay here from Neil. Classic flirt move from Neil, which stuns Andrew speechless. And then Andrew kisses him because of course he has to. They win the Nevada game in a shootout, which is kind of a wake-up call for them that things are getting harder. These teams are a higher level than the previous team. They watch the USC Penn game and the Ravens/Maryland game together as a team because they're getting nervous about facing these much better schools. Kevin is being an obvious Debbie Downer. He does not think they're going to do well. So Neil does pops him in the back of the head, which is something that Kevin has been doing to, and various other team members have been doing to Neil for a while. Kevin says, if you hit me again, but Andrew cuts him off with a, you'll what? And Allison and Dan share a glance. Matt's about to say something. everybody is like, ooh, what is going on here with Andrew and Neil? Like, these boys think they're being so subtle, and they so aren't. Then they play Binghampton. Dan asks Kevin while they're on the bus to like talk strats. So Dan asks Kevin to like sit up in the front. And so Kevin sits up in the front with them, and Aaron and Nikki also sit in the front. Neil considers sitting with them, but knows that it'll leave Andrew alone in the back. And Neil knows Andrew probably doesn't care, but Neil wants to be with Andrew, so he goes back there. And Kevin is like, no, you need to talk strats. And Neil's like, I already know what you're gonna say. Like, don't talk to me right now. And I'm really here for Neil standing up to Kevin.
This is a huge disappointment to me. I can't believe you'd so easily waste the 10 years of training I gave you, Wolf.
Actually, it wasn't wasted at all. I've used everything you've taught me. I just decided to do things a little differently.
And then this is the day that Neil gets the 0 text. Things are about to get interesting and questionable. So Neil ignores that text, obviously. He turns to look at Andrew. Andrew tells him to stop, and Neil asks if it's exhausting to turn everything into a fight. They talk again about the Andrew protecting Neil thing. Neil says he needs to learn to fight for himself and that he wants to be able to go back for Andrew. Andrew calls him a martyr and says, don't come crying to me when someone breaks your face. And let's just sit with that piece of foreshadowing for a moment. And then the conversation moves to a sanitized discussion of Neil's past. And then Andrew also shares a little bit of his past with Neil. They make a pit stop. Everyone gets off except Andrew and Neil. Wymack looks at the two of them like he wants to say something about it, but he doesn't. He just laughs at them. Neil wonders to Andrew how Wymack knew about them. Andrew still insists that there is no them. And Neil's like, yeah, still, how did he know when Aaron and Nikki didn't? Neil asks if Andrew will ever tell Nikki and Aaron about his sexuality. Andrew says he won't have to, and the upperclassmen are already betting on Neil's sexuality already. Neil says they'll all lose because he still doesn't swing. The only thing he's interested in is Andrew. Andrew says, don't say stupid things. Neil says, stop me, and then they kiss, obviously. They're so stupid. They're so foolishly in love, and it's really it's so sweet. I hate how sweet it is because we're just going for we're just heading towards pain. Although not luckily it's not Andrew Neil pain. It's mostly just pain for other reasons. At the half, the Foxes are down 2 points in this game against Binghampton, and Neil asks Andrew to shut down the goal and tells Andrew that if he does it, he'll give him anything. And so Andrew shuts down the goal. He is so whipped and pretending he isn't. They're able to win the game. Here's where things start to get really dicey. I call this next part the Baltimore torture sequence. That's just a name I've come up with for it, but this next part is going to be rough. I need to put some names up on the board. Things start to head downhill in a major way in this book right now. All right, I'm gonna put some names up on the board and I'll come back to you. I'm gonna move over this portion quickly because I don't want to talk about it. So after the game, Neil is alone in the locker room. He gets a call from a 443 number. He knows that's Baltimore, and it's the voice of one of his father's closest people, Lola. Neil tries to stay strong because he's so close to everything he wants, winning the NCAA XC championship, having friends, having a team. He tries to say that his team is going to wait for him, and then Lola's just like, well, then we'll hurt them too. And Neil is like, okay, fine, I'll go with you. So there are security details assigned to Neil's team, but they happen to be these guys, Romero and Jackson, who are part of the Butcher's people. So they're not real security details. Romero and Jackson tell the team to get going. Neil savors a first and last taste of freedom. kind of looking at everybody, silently telling them goodbye. Andrew obviously notices Neil's strain. Neil can't say anything in German because that'll tip these guys off that he's saying something to them. So he just says to Andrew, "Thank you, you were amazing." And Allison and Matt are like, because they don't realize that we're about to have pain, not fun. So out in the parking lot on the way to the bus, a riot breaks out, and this is when these guys take the opportunity to break Neil away from the team and like get him to a police cruiser that Lola's in, and they all leave. Lola's another one of those people who doesn't use contractions in her sentence structure. They talk about Lola is basically torturing Neil, interrogating him on what Neil has told the team. Neil tells him he hasn't told them anything. And then Neil realizes that Rico actually doesn't have much to do with this current situation. Like, Rico wouldn't want him out of the tournament. Rico did want his dad to find him, but Rico didn't want him out of the tournament. And so, like, the number countdown, the bag of blood, that all has been actually, like, Neil's dad's people, not Rico. Which kind of annoys me that we're about to have this like really painful sequence when it has nothing to do with Rico. And I like get that Neil's dad is a bad guy in this story too, like he's also part of the problem, but it just feels like Rico has been like such a strong enemy that like now to have this sort of whole bad thing happen that has nothing to do with him is a little annoying. But it does like clear things up afterwards for Neil to then have like no reserves or no reservations about just being himself and going for it. They switch cars. Violence continues to happen to Neil. One important bit is that they try to burn Neil's tattoo off. They continue to interrogate Neil about his teammates. Violence continues to happen. Neil like fades out of the picture. The book switches to narrating Neil as Nathaniel because that's Neil's real name. They switch cars again, get into another police vehicle. This time Lola gets in the trunk with Neil. Ugh. And then like a disturbance has been arranged at the Wisniewski house. That's their last name. Wisniewski house, so that the cops can like go there easily. And then when they get there, Lola chloroforms him and then takes him into the house. And they wake up in the basement. Lola is waiting for Nathan, Butcher of Baltimore. Neil's dad shows up, violence, blah, 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 and he's gonna kill Neil. And then Neil's uncle, British gangster, Stuart Hartford of the Hartford crime family, shows up and takes Neil's dad out, shoots him. Yeah. And then Stuart tells Neil that he needs to be careful with his backstory because the FBI let the Hartfords come into the country so that they could lead them to the butcher. So Neil needs to be careful with his story and not connect any of it to the Moriyamas. Keep the Moriyamas out of his mouth for this next bit. And then Stuart says that he'll come back for Neil when he can. And then the feds show up and they take Neil to the hospital. And then they put him in federal custody. He's in federal custody. The main two guys he's going to be talking to are these FBI agents, Agent Browning and Agent Towns. Neil asks about his team. The feds say that they've contacted him and they'll be here for questioning, and then they're going to leave. The feds basically imply that Neil's team isn't going to want to have anything to do with him, and that Neil is not going back to the team. Neil tells them about his mother's death, but then Neil stops talking. He wants to see the team. The feds aren't going to let him, and they actually don't think that Neil's teammates will want to see him. And Neil's yeah, they will. Andrew will, definitely. So the feds give in and take Neil to the team. The feds really have no understanding of the concept of teamwork. The feds tell him that he has just 20 minutes or until they throw you out of their lives to talk to the team. So how little they know. Neil reunites with the team. Everybody's kind of beat up in different ways because remember there was a riot and they're all freaking out about Neil. Andrew is not there, but then he comes barreling in. He's been handcuffed to Wymack. So that's fun. Andrew and Neil like synced their knees. Andrew takes Neil's bandages off his face and looks at him. Andrew's really mad at Neil for being a martyr. Neil and Andrew speak in German, and Neil explains that they want to take him away and put him in witness protection. Andrew tells Neil in English that he won't let the feds take him. Now, Andrew says this in English so that the rest of the team knows that the feds are trying to like take Neil away from their team. So the rest of the team then piles on like, no, you can't take Neil from us. Browning says, yeah, we can. And Wymack is like, no, you can't. This is our team decision and we want the problem child back. Neil says he'll talk to the feds, but only if Andrew's allowed to come with him. And Wymack's like, I'd take both of them if I were you. It's gonna work out way better for you if you do. Allison says they've just won her 3 bets and that she would rather hear how they got together on the bus ride back than what Neil's whole family deal is. Neil and Andrew don't deny that they're in a relationship, and Aaron and Nikki are shocked, which I'm like, you guys are fools. Everyone else could see it coming. I guess they're just like too close to Andrew to see it. I don't know. Neil and Andrew go with the FBI. Neil asks Andrew if he can be Neil again instead of Nathaniel. And Andrew says he told Neil to stay and then to leave Nathaniel buried with his father in Baltimore. Neil tells the FBI everything like sans Moriyamas, so he doesn't connect anything to the Moriyamas. He leaves them out of it. They still try to get him to go into witness protection. He refuses. Eventually they give him like documents to formally like make him officially Neil Jostin, and they tell him like he can't use any other aliases. He has to be Neil Jostin for sure now. And he's like, okay, cool. They go back to the hotel that the team had been staying at in Baltimore while they like waited for Neil to get out of the hospital. Abby like takes a look at Neil's injuries. Andrew's there for support. Neil is gonna have has a panic attack, but Andrew's there to support him. So that's nice. Wymack says they'll all talk later about it, that he's told them not to ask any questions on the bus, that they're gonna wait to like actually sit down at the stadium and like get it together then. On the bus, Matt asks Neil if he's okay, and Neil says no, but he thinks he will be, which is growth. We love to see it. So they get back to the stadium. Neil gives them the whole story. He warns them that he's still a loose end with the Moriyamas, but that his uncle, Stuart Hartford of Hartford crime family, will try to negotiate for him. It's a bit fatalistic, like it's a bit negative, because basically Neil's like, yeah, Moriyamas are probably still gonna wanna kill me because I'm a loose end for them, but maybe my uncle can figure it out, who knows? So that's fun. Wymack's worried about the press because obviously the press is going to find out that Neil is the butcher's son. And Neil says, well, what if there was something else we could tell the press? And then Neil asks Kevin in French to reveal who his father is to the press. Kevin says, I can't do that, not now. And Neil's like, make it now. And he tells the team, before Kevin says he'll do it, he tells the team that Kevin will reveal who his father is. And Kevin says he has to let his father know before he does anything else. They ask Neil if he needs anything, and he tells them they already gave him everything he needs by letting him stay. All right, and then we move on to a really fun bit. It's spring break. Yes, they've missed the first weekend of spring break because of this whole nonsense in Baltimore. And so everybody's missed their flights for spring break. So they decide to go on a group spring break together. Now, this is how this book really is like anime again. We've had like a really terrible, really serious little episode right here. And now we're gonna follow it up with like the beach episode, like the vacation episode. So yes, we go on spring break. There's a couple conversations about like Neil's tattoo being burned and how Rico's gonna be mad about that. And like Kevin is trying to have this conversation in French, but Neil switches it back to English because Neil's done lying to the rest of the team. He's done talking he's done speaking in other languages in front of people with Kevin. And then Neil tells Kevin that he should get his tattoo removed. And Kevin's like, don't even joke about that. And Neil's like, but it's not a joke. It's not a joke. Andrew comes over with like trash bags and duct tape, which sounds like the start of a horror film, but it's just to like protect Neil's burns while Neil takes a shower. And Matt then gets the hell out of there because Matt's like, not trying to cock block, bro, not trying to get in your way. Do what you need to do. Andrew helps Neil take a shower, and that's all they do. Just kidding. Obviously, it gets a little spicier than that. There are like some steps forward in their physical relationship in terms of like Andrew's comfort level with Neil touching him. And afterwards they talk about secrets because Neil's like, I've given all my secrets away, I don't have anything else to give. And Andrew's like, you'll think of something. So yeah, they're going on spring break together. Before they go, Neil goes to talk to Wymack, and Kevin comes too. And Neil thanks Wymack basically for saving his life. And Wymack says Neil saved his own life and that Neil has basically saved the team and others, like including Kevin and the cousins, like really making an impact on everyone's lives because Neil is the best. Then Kevin goes to talk to Wymack and tells Wymack that he's his son. When they get back to the dorms, like before they're getting ready to go, before they like leave for spring break, Neil gets out of the car and tells everyone that Wymack is Kevin's dad. And Dan's like pissed because Wymack's like a father figure to her and she's really annoyed that Kevin didn't tell him. It's just so funny how Neil is like done with Kevin being like sensitive and afraid and just starts like wilding on him all the time and like telling people stuff. Go on this vacation, they buy obscene amounts of alcohol, as one does. Nikki votes that Andrew and Neil take the private room on the lower level, and no one contests that, so yeah. Nikki's basically pulling a Pei Ming here, if you know what I'm saying. Allison says she wishes they had daiquiris, and Nikki's like, you thought we didn't bring alcohol? Like, girl, wait up. And then he and Andrew make drinks for everybody. Andrew and Neil are left alone inside after this, and Andrew pours Neil a scotch and says he has nothing to lose now. Like previously, Neil didn't drink because he was afraid of spilling secrets, and Neil doesn't have any secrets now, so Neil accepts the drink. Dan and Kevin separate off for a private fight. Aaron also chooses to pick a fight with Neil. This is Neil and Aaron are talking alone in the kitchen. He's worried that because of Andrew's past with sexual trauma, Neil could be taking advantage of Andrew. And in response to this, Neil punches Aaron. Aaron says Nikki thinks it's hate sex. So this is really their reaction. Nikki and Aaron's reaction to their relationship really kind of pisses me off because I don't think they give Andrew or Neil enough credit. And it's also like they aren't even really they're not having sex. They're not even doing that. They're so far from having that level of a physical relationship because they're so traumatized. And they're also so conscientious of one another for like acknowledging both of their trauma. And I hate that like Andrew's family, Nikki and Aaron, like make a bastardization of his relationship with Neil. Like, I don't know, it's really frustrating that Aaron says that to Neil. Aaron asks if he thinks Andrew will fight for Neil, asks Neil if he thinks Andrew will fight for him, and Neil says no. Sad. They go to sleep. The next day, Neil has to let the injuries air out, otherwise it's gonna get like nasty. And Renee goes like ahead of him and asks everyone not to say anything about it. So Neil comes in front of everyone with like all of his injuries out in the open, and Kevin asks if Neil can still play, and Neil says, yes, of course, and Dan says, no way, and that they'll sub in and ask Neil to like trust them and to let them play and let them win, and to give him the time that he needs to recover. And then Neil thinks about arguing with this, but then thanks her instead. So more growth, acknowledging that you're actually injured and you actually can't play. And there's some like sweet team moments in here. Then Renee comes knocking at the Andrew and Neil's door in the middle of the night. because she needs Andrew's car to go get John, because Kengo, the leader of the Moriyama family, has died, making Ichiru now the leader of the Moriyama clan. And because Kengo's died, Riko has hurt John. So Neil is like, why do you think they're gonna let you in when you get to the Ravens campus? And Renee says they will let her in. When Renee comes back, she tells them that John's hurt, but with Abby, so he's okay. They can't believe she was able to kidnap him. Renee says she asked Edgar Allan's president to intervene, basically by having her mom, who's a reporter, threaten to blackmail, like basically blackmailing the school. And John was in such a bad condition when the president went to like help her look for him, that they let Renee take him, but John won't say who hurt him. And John's like, Riko is so pissed because Riko wasn't invited to his own father's funeral. It's a whole thing. Neil tells Kevin to convince John to stay with Abby, basically. And Neil and Kevin have this like private conversation about fear, survival, when to stand your ground. Neil tells him to die free or die a failure, but to pick a side before he talks to John. Yeah. Neil continues to have no sympathy for Kevin. They get back to campus. They drop Kevin and Renee off at Abby's to see Jean. Wymack takes Neil to go talk to the school president because the school is now like, excuse me, we have a gangster's son on the team. Wymack argues for Neil to the trustees or whatever, and like gets the go-ahead to continue playing despite being a threat to his own safety and others, because it's for the glory, the NCAA glory. So Wymack then also drops the bomb that Kevin is his son and that Kevin's going to be telling the presses this week. He's just like, mic drop, I'm out. This boy's a gangster and he's staying on the team, and Kevin's my son. Deal with it. Okay, so the Monday after spring break, immediately the Moriyamas are there. Immediately the Moriyama Yakuza grabs Neil out of campus and is like, you're gonna come with us. And Neil goes with them because he's basically like, fuck it, this is my life now. And then Neil negotiates with Ichiru on behalf of himself, and then John and Kevin as well. He promises Moriyama his professional XE profits. Neil's like surprisingly very diplomatic, very respectful in this conversation, because Neil can read the room. Neil knows that Riko doesn't have any real power. Like, Riko can hurt him, but he doesn't have any real power in the Moriyama clan. And so Neil knows who to actually talk serious with. Anyway, Neil makes a point about what a fool Riko has been making of himself and like how bad it's looking for the Ravens team, that like Kevin has left the team and John is now not on the team, and how like everything with like the cars and whatnot has been like kind of a disaster for the Ravens. So he makes a point about that. Ichiru accepts 80% of their profits during their XC careers as a team from John, Kevin, and Neil, allowing Neil to live and placing himself, Jean, and Kevin under the main family's protection as like main family assets. So basically, he's a sellout, but it's kind of funny because like this solution is like, it works, but basically they've made themselves assets, like commodities for the Moriyama Yakuza family, which I'm like, is that morally good? Who cares? Neil grabs Kevin and Andrew and like they go to tell John about this. He tells them, and then Kevin and John are just gonna need to have a private conversation. So Andrew and Neil leave. And Andrew asks him how it feels to be a sellout, and Neil says great. He tells Andrew to find something to hold on to because like Neil is now like, I've got protection, I can play XC, like I'm doing great. My father's dead, I'm doing awesome. So you, Andrew, you need to find something to make you feel awesome and figure it out. He tells Andrew to like borrow Neil's obsession with XC until he can find something else to live for because Neil doesn't want the Andrew-Neil thing to end. Andrew says everything ends, shattering my heart. And then Andrew hands Neil a package and leaves, and it's matching armbands to Andrew's so that Neil can hide the burns on his arms. Then my heart is shattering again, but like in a completely different way, like in a positive way. So Kevin is basically like so distracted now because he's like, his whole dynamic has shifted because he now doesn't have to worry about Rico. Then they go to night practice and Kevin starts practicing with his previously injured hand. Neil's like, this is crazy. But seeing Kevin do that propels Andrew to like join him on the court and they start playing together and they're kind of like having this fight about like loyalties and protection and like running and blah, 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 all these themes that have been going on throughout the book. So much healing is happening in a myriad of sports-related ways, like during sports, but also like emotional growth is happening. And that's how you know this is really a queer sports story and not a sports story that happens to have queer characters. It's all on the field. The aggression is fought out on the field because we can't talk about it. It's cathartic or whatever. Andrew takes Neil to the library after one of his classes and he gives Neil his knives and then like Andrew finds Caitlin in the library and confronts her. I don't know why, honestly, Andrew is like really violent in this situation and I don't get it, honestly. It annoys me a little. Andrew says a lot of rude things to Caitlin, but basically he gives Caitlin the go-ahead to like date Aaron. So he's a dick about it, but he like lets them see each other. So complicated. Andrew then like leaves and Neil with Caitlin, and then Neil tries to comfort her because she's crying, obviously, because Andrew's a dick. And then he's like, you won, like be happy. And then he tells her that Aaron's not in class right now if she wants to like call him and go see him. Then Neil catches back up to Andrew and asks him what changed his mind, and Andrew ignores him. And Neil calls in his, like, he has a honesty game turn left over, so he calls that in and asks, who said please that made you hate the word so much? And Andrew says, I did, and it's like such a punch in the gut. Andrew says, he said he would stop if I said it. Neil says you believed him. Andrew says I was 7. Awful. Awful. Okay. So Andrew's history of abuse predates Drake, essentially is what we learned from this. Neil hates that Andrew holds his own life in so little regard, even though he protects others, Nikki, Aaron, etc. And then Neil says, like, after everything that's happened to you, how can you stand to be with me? And like, how is this okay? And he reaches for Andrew as Andrew turns away, but Andrew says no, and Neil stops like before he can grab Andrew's wrist, and Andrew says that's why. So basically, Andrew's okay with Neil because Neil stops when Andrew tells him to. The bar is so low. The bar is so low. So on to the next death match. They have to play Binghamton again. I don't know, I guess that's just how it worked out. I can't claim to understand it. Neil's on the sideline because he's hurt. Kevin is still playing with his non-dominant hand, so the hand that isn't injured. The Bearcats play like they're trying to hurt someone, basically like they're trying to eliminate another player because they're assholes. The Foxes keep their cool. At the half, they talk about drinking when they get back, and Aaron mentions that the Vixens probably have a decent supply. The team is surprised. But Andrew doesn't react to Aaron saying this, so basically they cautiously learn that Caitlin and Aaron are together, like that problem has been solved. They go into the second half, take home a 7-5 win. Aaron and Caitlin kiss in such a straight way on the court. Ugh, they annoy me. I mean, I'm happy for them, whatever, but they annoy me a little. Kevin and Neil talk to the press. Kevin is dropping bombs left and right. Kevin tells them that Wymack is his father, and then he digs into the Ravens, like critiquing their coaching, their training, their playing style. At the end, he then tacks on that he's never been skiing, but he'd like to try one day. Remember, Kevin's hand injury was supposedly caused by a skiing incident. Now we know that Rico did it, but everyone else in the world has thought that Kevin had a skiing accident. So yes, Kevin saying, I have never been skiing, but I'd like to try it one day, is a reveal to the press that his injury did not come from a skiing accident. So basically, Kevin pulls a Neil and then has a total panic attack about it in the locker room. But they're into the semis with USC and Edgar Allan. So they have a party, and then Dan and Nikki are basically like, Neil, Andrew left the party and your room is empty, so you better get your ass back up to the room. They're like, don't lose the opportunity to take advantage of a open dorm room. Before Neil leaves to go see Andrew, Nikki asks Aaron in German how Andrew is okay with Caitlin, and Aaron says Neil used Caitlin against her, so he used Neil against Andrew because Neil is as much in violation of the rule as Caitlin was. So basically, Andrew chose Neil over his deal with Aaron, which is news to Neil. Because Neil did not think that Andrew would fight for him, but he did. Aaron also tells Neil that they're going to switch rooms, that Neil and Aaron are going to switch rooms because he doesn't want Caitlin to be in the same room as Andrew. So Neil goes to Andrew and then confronts him about fighting for him. It's in a flirty way though. Andrew says, I'm not as smart as I thought I was. I should know not to get involved. And Neil says he isn't going anywhere, and that Neil says he's not going to be like the people in Andrew's past. And Neil is so present, so conscious in these conversations, and always making sure that consent is there. It seems really, again, the bar is so low, but they are really nice conversations. Kevin's girlfriend shows up the next day. Wymack brings her to Fox Tower. Her name's Thea. She used to be a Raven. She's 5 years older than Kevin. She says she won't talk to Kevin in mixed company because Andrew and Neil are there. And Kevin's just talk. And then she starts counting down, which is gross. And also she's so much older than him. Honestly, this relationship I don't believe in. I don't like her. Whatever. Kevin says they need to talk to Jean too, and so they then leave to go see John at Abby's. The USC game. Now USC pulls a little stunt here. They are just in a silly goofy mood, and it's not what I would have done if I wanted to win the championship, but it is I guess you can call it sportsmanship, but they pull a little stunt here. Jeremy Knox, he is the captain of the USC team. Kevin's a big fan of USC. Kevin is a big fan of Jeremy Knox. And Jeremy is just a delight, just a sunny California boy. We love him. Kevin briefly speaks to Jeremy about adding Jean to the USC lineup next year. And then Jeremy lets the Fox know that they will be playing with just 9 players, just like the Foxes have. Wymack rejects that. He's I don't want your pity. And Jeremy says it's not pity. They want to learn from the Foxes. The silly Trojans. At the half, it's 7-4 in favor of the Trojans. But Wymack says that they don't know how to pace themselves and that they'll have them in the second half. So the Foxes do close the gap. It's a 13-9 final score. because the Trojans are just wiped. Like, none of them have ever played a full game before. A lot of them have never even played like full halves. So they are totally wiped by the end of this game. But they're really sweet. They're the best team, honestly. They go to Columbia one final time in the books. They get a late start down there because Neil and Kevin wanted to watch the USC Edgar Allan match. In the press afterwards, Jeremy, like they lose, USC loses to Edgar Allan. And then Jeremy in the press afterwards says that John will be joining the USC team next year for his senior year. Jeremy X John is the best ship in the book, and they have 0 interactions on screen, but we still love them. They go to Sweeties. Andrew doesn't get them any dust. He's like, we're done with that, because Andrew makes the decisions around here. Basically, at this point, Neil's gotten pretty much everything he wanted from Andrew. Like getting Aaron and Caitlin to be, allowing Aaron and Caitlin to be together, getting them off dust, etc., etc. They have a really awkward conversation with Roland at the bar about Roland knowing that Neil and Andrew were together before Aaron and Nikki, and also that Roland knew Andrew was gay. Like, Nikki is like, dude, why didn't you tell me any of this? Then Neil has like a lot of sweet thoughts about spending his life with Andrew. Love to see it. Love to see it. So the Ravens game, it's the final. Now, they would have played another game with Edgar Allan technically because it's a round robin, but because USC lost to both of them, they don't need to play that game. So they just go straight to the finals. The Ravens are kind of scrambling with fallout right now because both losing John and Kevin doing this whole reveal about like the fact that his injury was not an accident. The Foxes are practicing as hard as they can, like everyone's coming to night practices. Neil gets the 2 tattooed over with a queen chess piece. He says, let Rico be the king, he'll be the most dangerous piece on the board. So Neil is like really happy about this, obviously, because it means Kevin is growing beyond Rico and his fears and is now committed to being his own number 1. So that's sweet. They get to the Ravens Stadium. The Ravens Stadium is super depressing. It also is the US team's stadium. So they have like these towers where people can watch from. Like, it's kind of intense. They have like guests. They were allowed to invite guests. So like Matt's parents both are there, plus Matt's dad's mistress. A couple of Dan's like stripper sisters are there. Eric shows up. B shows up. Yeah, so everyone goes over to see their guests, except for Kevin and Neil, who don't have any guests. Kevin calls, like Wymack tells them they should go mingle too, but Kevin says like those people are a distraction. And Wymack tells him it's called a support network. Look it up. And Kevin says Thea's watching from the tower and that his father comes to all his games, and that's enough. And then Wymack like kind of pauses and then says, your mother would be proud of you. And Kevin says, not just of me. And it's so touching father-son bond that Neil can't handle it and has to leave. So a guard lets Neil know that Stuart is there to see him. Stuart Hartford, remember, Hartford crime family. Stuart warns him to be careful. The Moriartys have been restructuring, and as they have been restructuring, they've been taking people out. Neil says he'll be careful, and then Wymack gives them like a pep talk before the game. He tells them it's not about the Ravens or Rico or revenge, but about them and their hard work. So the game starts. Rico's really mad about Kevin's tattoo. It's like exhausting and violent. At the half, it's 7-3 Ravens. Renee was in goal in the first half and obviously feels really guilty because she's let a lot of goals in. Kevin and Aaron are like arguing about defense, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like a yikes moment because that is a big point gap. Kevin comes back in at the half and then starts playing left-handed, and the crowd goes wild because Kevin's using his hand that was previously injured. Kevin starts using French to talk to Neil across the court because John's not there to understand it. They score twice. The game is vicious, but Andrew is like blocking all the shots. With 17 minutes left, it's 8-6 Ravens still. The Ravens start really like losing their minds, fouling all over the place. Andrew gets fouled by a striker who purposefully crashes into him, like doesn't stop before they get to the goal. Neil rushes at that striker, but Matt warns him not to get a red card or get carded. And then Andrew tells Neil to play defense and to replace Matt, who's limping. Matt's confused because Neil has been a striker, but Neil says he started as a backliner and that he went up against Rico that winter as a backliner, so to like let him handle it. So Neil is now defending against Rico, and then Dan's moved up to Neil's striker position and Allison has come on as the dealer. So Neil's playing well, he's getting the ball to Allison, and that leads to another goal, and they're tied, but the Ravens score again. Nikki comes on for Allison, Matt for Aaron, and with 3 backliners, they shut the Ravens' offense down. Kevin ties it back up again, and then Neil knows, is like, oh no, it's gonna go to a shootout, and there's no way we can win in a shootout. But then all of a sudden, Kevin scores again, and the score ends, final buzzer, 10-9, Foxes. So exciting. Like, I can actually feel the excitement as if I was there, the way this is written. Anyway, they win. It's crazy. The Ravens are shocked. It's like one of the first times, no, it is the first time that they've lost. So it's a really big deal for them. Rico tries to take a swing at Neil with his racket, but Andrew blocks Rico from hitting Neil and breaks Rico's wrist. And yeah, see, the gays don't need to kiss after the game. It's all about defending your lover from his enemy. It's so romantic. After the game, a security guard comes for Neil, and Neil is brought to the East Tower where Ichiru, Tetsuji, Rico, and Stuart, and one other guy who we don't know, are all waiting. A gun is brought in, and Neil's like, oh shit, I'm about to get killed because I beat Rico. But then Ichiru shoots Rico.
In this game, losers don't get to go home. They go to hell.
Now, I did not see this coming. This is literally like the last thing that happens. I did not see it coming. Anyway, Ichiru shoots Rico, stages it as a suicide, and then is like, is this good for you, Neil? And Neil's like, yeah, this works out perfectly for me. And then Neil smiles and like leaves happy. The way Neil is just smiling after seeing this man die. Ugh. But anyway, Neil's finally happy. He has a family, a future, and someone who, even if he doesn't say it, loves him. The book ends with Andrew and Neil in an embrace, and Neil knowing that he has everything he wanted and everything he needed, and that he's never going to need to run again. So yes, it's very sweet there at the end, in a weird way where someone has just been murdered. But it's great. It's fantastic. We love it. Honestly, what else can I say about these books? Obviously, there's a lot of problems in them. A lot of there's so much abuse and trauma that is like a little overboard. A lot overboard, maybe. There's a lot of kind of plot devices that don't make sense, like the medicine thing, or like why Mac being Kevin's dad all of a sudden, and like, I don't know. There's Neil's like press attitude. Like there's a lot of things that are like hard to like reconcile together. But overall, like the relationship between Neil and Andrew is really, really well written. The lines, the conversations that they have are really quite something. And I like that they're like not necessarily good people. Like, they're interesting characters, definitely. So yeah, there's obviously other problems with like representation and like various other issues. They're in no way, like, they're by certainly no means perfect books. They're very questionable. But they also are really sweet. And if you don't want to like read the actual books, if you've watched these videos but haven't read the books, there's a ton of fan fiction out there that like you can read about these characters and now understand, and it's all really good. So I recommend that. But yeah, it's they're a trip for sure. But thank you for going on that trip with me. I think I'm gonna continue this channel. I'm not sure like what entirely I'll post. It's probably like similar breakdowns, video essays, analysis, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I have a master's degree in media studies. So obviously I should put it to some use. But anyway, thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe for more videos of various topics. And yeah, thank you.